High-speed rail between Dallas and Houston could be transformational. Texas is a state defined by long distances, rapid growth, and a transportation system that still assumes everyone will drive or fly everywhere. So what happened to the Texas Bullet Train? Today, we're going to walk through what was proposed, why it made sense, what went wrong, where it stands now, and what the whole saga reveals about how Texas actually makes decisions about infrastructure. Welcome back to Cities in Motion. I'm Jacob, the podcast for anyone who wants cities built for people. Each week, we dig into the systems, design, and culture that shape urban life and explore how smarter transportation, better planning, and thoughtful policy can make our communities more livable. The original proposal was simple, bold, and very specific. A high-speed rail line between Dallas and Houston, about 240 miles, with a travel time of roughly 90 minutes. Not higher speed, not incremental upgrades, true high-speed rail, with dedicated tracks, electric trains, no freight sharing, and trains running at over 200 miles per hour. The idea that you could board in downtown Dallas, ride, and arrive in Houston faster than driving, faster than flying once you account for airport security, and dramatically more comfortable than either. This was not a public rail project in the traditional sense. It was proposed as a privately financed, privately operated line, a Texas-style approach meant to avoid public funding fights and taxpayer risk. The promise was fast, clean, reliable, intercity travel, built without government money. On paper, it looked almost too good to be true. Imagine this. You leave your house in Dallas, take a local train, light rail, or rideshare to the station. You walk onto a platform, no TSA, no liquids rule, no boarding group chaos. You sit down in a wide, quiet seat with Wi-Fi and power outlets. 90 minutes later, you step off in Houston. No traffic, no turbulence, no rental car counter, no 2-hour drive through flat nothingness. It wouldn't just connect two cities, it would effectively shrink the state. Dallas and Houston would become functionally part of the same economic region. Business meetings become day trips. Families visit more often. Universities, hospitals, and cultural institutions become more accessible. This is what high-speed rail does in places like Japan, France, and Spain. It doesn't replace cities, it ties them together. So why does this proposal make sense in Texas of all places? First, congestion. I-45 between Dallas and Houston is one of the most congested and dangerous highways in the state. It's a critical freight corridor and a daily bottleneck. Second, growth. Both metro areas are growing fast. Millions of people, millions more coming, and that growth keeps adding pressure to the highways and airports that are already stretched thin. Third, flights. The Dallas-Houston is one of the busiest short-haul air routes in the country. That's a sign of demand, but also of inefficiency. Flying 240 miles is energy intensive, time consuming, and extremely sensitive to weather and delays. Fourth, climate and energy. Electric rail is vastly more energy efficient than cars or planes, especially as the grid gets cleaner. And finally, time savings. Door to door, high-speed rail is competitive or faster than flying, and dramatically faster than driving. From a transportation planning perspective, this corridor is almost a textbook case of high-speed rail, which makes what happens next even more interesting. Support largely came from urban leaders, business groups, developers, environmental advocates, transportation planners. Opposition came from rural landowners alongside the route, some conservative lawmakers, highway and aviation interest, and people deeply skeptical of anything labeled rail, transit, or infrastructure. And importantly, opposition wasn't necessarily about trains. It was about land, power, control, and trust.
We are still talking about it. It's a project that's been stalled for years, but today a new effort to get that high-speed rail service in Dallas and Fort Worth back on track again. The North Central Texas Council of Government just voted to ask the federal government to allow funding for the project. The goal is to have high-speed rail service between Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth. But a previous plan to run the train near Reunion Tower drew criticism and raised concerns about whether it would help or hurt the city of Dallas. The bullet train has faced strong opposition from lawmakers and landowners. Even Hunt Consolidated, the powerful private group run by the Hunt family. But on the other side, a study commissioned by the city of Dallas found that train could boost the local economy by more than $5 billion a year. Texas Central, the developer behind the Dallas-Houston high-speed rail, is pushing forward, pointing to Texas' pro-business climate. Next steps would involve looking into alternative routes in downtown Dallas, plus getting more feedback from the community.
3 main things derailed the project. First, politics. Even without public funding, the project needed state cooperation for right-of-way, regulatory approval, and legal authority to acquire land. State lawmakers increasingly turned against it, not because it cost money, but because it challenged traditional power structures and ideologies around property rights and government involvement. Second, rural landowner resistance. The rail line would pass through hundreds of private properties. Landowners feared eminent domain, loss of control, and unwanted development. For many rural Texans, this wasn't a train, it was an intrusion. And in Texas politics, rural voices are often disproportionately powerful. Third, legal and financial uncertainty. Years of lawsuits slowed the project. Costs rose, investors got nervous, the pandemic disrupted global finance and supply chains. A project that required speed and momentum got trapped in delay and uncertainty, which is deadly for mega projects. The bigger issue is that Texas is very good at building roads, but not very good at building complex, coordinated infrastructure. High-speed rail requires long-term planning, multi-jurisdictional cooperation, strong public institutions, and political alignment across urban and rural areas. Texas governance is fragmented, locally controlled, and often hostile to centralized planning, even when that planning benefits the state as a whole. So the project wasn't just fighting lawsuits. It was fighting the structure of Texas itself. Is the project dead? Not officially, but it is paused, stalled, and politically frozen. The company behind it has changed names, restructured, and reduced its public profile. Some rights of way remain secured, some planning work remains valid, but there is no active construction timeline, no firm financing package, and no political momentum. In practice, it is dormant, not killed, not alive, just waiting. Could it come back? Possibly, but not easily. It would likely require federal involvement, a shift in state politics, higher fuel prices or worse congestion, or a generational change in how Texans think about mobility. Ironically, the worse traffic and sprawl get, the more attractive rail becomes. The conditions that killed it may eventually be the ones that revive it. This story isn't just about a train, it's about urban-rural tension, property rights versus collective benefit, short-term politics versus long-term planning, and a state that's growing faster than its institutions can adapt. Texas wants growth, it wants business, it wants freedom of movement, but it struggles with the idea that freedom sometimes requires shared infrastructure, not just individual vehicles. High-speed rail asked Texas to think like a region, not just a collection of counties, and Texas wasn't quite ready. The bullet train wasn't just a transportation project. It was a test of whether the state could imagine a future that doesn't look like its past. So far, that future is on hold. But the problems it was meant to solve are only getting bigger. And sooner or later, Texans will have to choose more lanes or new ideas. Thanks for listening to Cities in Motion. If you enjoyed this episode, share it, subscribe, and let people know what you'd like us to cover next.